Okay, everyone, I'm going to talk to you about GotoFile, a batshit crazy idea. So what is GotoFile? GotoFile is a module that is kind of like the special form of Goto with functions, except instead of letting you jump to another function without unwinding your stack or adding to your stack, it lets you jump to a different file without changing your stack. So basically, you use GotoFile and the script or whatever you want to load, and then everything after that won't run. It'll instead be parsing your new file. How the hell is this useful? In most cases, it's not. But GotoFile is actually used by test2harness, or YATH, when it runs in preload mode. And the reason for that is because a lot of tests test stack traces, or they generate warnings or exceptions and need to make sure that those are reported to the right file and line number and package. Well, if you're preloading stuff in a Perl script, then forking and running the thing, you have introduced a new stack trace, which will break a lot of tests. So test2harness uses GotoFile to make sure it can launch your file after preload without introducing any new stack frames into the scope. So how does it work? Lots of black magic. So there's a lot of things to cover on this, and I'm going to go through them one by one. But first of all, use statements are begin blocks, so they execute before any other lines are parsed. So GotoFile inserts a source filter, cue the boos. But this doesn't suffer from all the issues source filters usually suffer from, because I'm not trying to parse any Perl or rewrite any Perl. Instead, I'm throwing away a lot of Perl and loading in other Perl. So things to consider. The idea, the concept of this is actually pretty simple, especially since we already have the special form of Goto. But to actually implement this required a lot of magic. And now I'm going to explain each piece of magic in detail before showing you how it all goes together. First of all, forking in a begin block, because all this has to happen at the begin time. So one thing to note, that if you fork in a begin block, the rest of your file will only be parsed by one of the two processes, because they share the file handle and they both get fast forwarded as you proceed. I reported this as a bug and it was closed as not a bug. File and line number. In Perl, if you suddenly switch to another Perl script code-wise via source filter, it's going to still think you're on the old file and line number. But thankfully, this is Perl and you can do almost anything. So you can have this special comment that is not truly a comment that tells Perl, hey, you are actually on line 42 of life, the universe, and everything, not whatever you were at before. Data. A lot of people don't realize, but the data file handle is just a regular file handle. You can close it and reopen it to whatever you want it to be. And so Perl can do some strange things. For instance, if you open a file handle and then read from that file handle inside a begin block, all your exceptions are going to append this at the end, telling you what file handle you last read from and what line. Once again, this will screw up tests if you suddenly have this injected into all your errors and warnings. But you can fix that because Perl has the magic $.dot variable. If you localize that first, it will no longer care that you have opened and read from a file. So making a module do stuff when loaded, we're at a Perl conference. I don't think I need to explain how import works to all you guys. So now I'm putting it all together. This is the first of 2 slides that do that. So we got an import, and it finds out what file you want to suddenly switch to. Then it generates an ID for us to come look up some state later. Then it creates a new header to switch you back to package main, close your data file handle, and reopen the data file handle to something we've stored in our ID, and then set the line number and file name. And now all this are lines that will be executed later. Then we insert our source filter and give it information on how to get to all this stuff we just kind of typed out. Finally, the filter sub, what it does is first it will do some init, and to init what it'll do is filter read, which means read the rest of the file you were about to filter. In most cases, filters then parse that and modify it. In our case, we just throw it all away. We do not care what is left in the original file. We localize $.dot, we open the new file, and then we start to output that header that we'd made on the previous slide. And then when that header is done, it proceeds to then return line by line every line in the file. And suddenly you have not introduced any new scopes. Your file and line number are correct. Your error messages are correct. Everything is correct, but you are now in a new file running as though you had started Perl with that file, except anything you preloaded is still there. And this is the god-awful magic that allows Yath to preload things before running your tests.